Sarah Fitri. There is the deputy editor, Dr. Husam Hilmi, the production editor, Ning Chen. There is events manager, Agnes, myself, and then we have faculty advisors, Dr. Ankharat Butler-Rees, Dr. Morag Morrison-Hilmi, and Dr. Pallavi Banerjee. So yeah, we will talk about the research, the aims of CERJ. So what do CERJ aims? So we have like some points here. So first, we aim to provide a platform for researchers to share their network, and then to offer early career researchers feedback and networking opportunities, to promote accountability and transparency in publishing, and to support the growth of educational researchers. And then the focus and scope for CERJ is to accept and publishes a wide range of articles related to research and education, whether ongoing or completed, and also we welcome contributions from all career stages. Okay, so now I will hand over to Dr. Husam Hilmi as our speaker to share his points and tips for your research submissions. Over
Well,
to you,
thank you.
Dr. Hilmi.
Thank you. Just confirm if you can hear me, first of all. That would be great. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining this workshop. It's supposed to be as interactive as possible. So I think one way to capture everyone's contributions could be by the note section or the chatting section. Feel free to drop any questions. We can pick up that at the Q&A section. I wanted actually to share my insights and my experience in relation to how to manage a successful submission, whether it is to CERJ or to any other publishers or journals. And some of the things I will talk about actually will be directed towards CERJ, given that this is the journal now we have in question or being targeted. So if you just go to the next slide. Thank you. So these are a few challenges that I have encountered when I had to publish. Now, I think there was a slide in the beginning which looked at numbers of publications, and actually that's an approximate number. I think I do have over 60 publications, but actually they are going into different directions in terms of being chapters. Some of them are books, some of them are review papers, some of them are reflective papers, for example. And what I found out, interestingly, that journals are different and publishers are different. Some publishers can turn around things in a very quick time frame. Some others actually would take longer time. One of the longest papers that took time to publish actually was 3 years time frame. And I remember that was taking place during the 2018, where the writing took a year, and then sending it after later in 2019. Things simply took longer time because there were a number of revisions needed, and I ended up publishing that after 3 years. And again, it's different from a publisher to another. Some publishers have multiple volumes, for example. Some others have one volume a year. In our case, with this journal, we have one volume a year, which is towards the end of the year. Hence, the time frame being considered accordingly. So, in terms of peer review, again, it is a big challenge for different journals, because simply every single submission will go through a double-blinded peer review process and initial screening process, which usually takes place by the editorial team. Then there will be two peer reviewers looking at your submission. Now, there might be comments for improvements, and in many cases, it sounds being accepted from the first round might be a miracle or might be something of a blessing. So, I would always be ready for receiving reviewers' feedback for amendments. That's something very regular and very usual. Competition, in many cases, journals do accept certain number. So even though that they're encouraging you to submit, but for example, they might have a certain quota or a certain limitation in terms of how many can be reviewed within a certain time frame. So you might find in a regular volume anything between 10 to 15 papers being included, even though that there might have been more papers submitted and more being qualified for acceptance, but due to the limitations, that becomes an issue, and then they will prioritize the top, let's say, 10 or 15 papers. Our case is a little bit different, which I will tell you in the next slide later on. um, Communication can be a bit of a challenge with different journals, because simply all the ones who are part of these journals are volunteers, like Sarah, like Agnes, myself. We are actually taking that as an additional commitment. Everybody is full in terms of calendar, and interestingly, this is something being added. And something I usually say to people is that all these additional commitments, usually they tend to take time before 9 o'clock morning and after 5 p.m. And you can imagine, um, some journals have policies where they respond within a certain time, say 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. Some others may take weeks to come back to you. So don't get frustrated with other journals where you might send an email and you receive, let's say, a response after 2, 3 weeks. And maybe it is just an acknowledgement, by the way. They would just say, "Thank you, we got your email. We'll review it in due time or due course." And it's just to say we've responded. So that is going down to the volunteers' point of view. Um, Open access. Many journals right now are reconsidering the way they're providing access. As you know, journals in the past used to be copied journals, so you would find them in libraries. Right now, pretty much are all digital, and they're all pushing for the open access consideration. Now, our journal, you will find with the CERJ, it is open access not to only Cambridge audience, but also to the global audience, whether they're students or not. Um, as a researcher, you have a big time of a challenge around time constraints, because you have a deadline. And one of the things I always say to people, I wish if there is this invention where people can buy time. Um, if somebody can sell that product, I think there will be the richest people on this planet. So time is a big factor. Usually there are deadlines, and in our case, there is one single deadline where submissions are coming in to be processed for review. Be mindful of ethics, and again, sometimes which could happen with all journals, that even though something might be accepted, but remember, you are the one who is ultimately responsible for the content of that paper, because it is your paper, it is your research, and you want to be mindful about any possible damage, including reputation damage, brand damage, names, etc. So be as ethical as possible. And of course, the journal editors and reviewers will do their part, but it's all subject to your declaration as well. So, be as open as you can if you're thinking about pushing a paper, whether to this journal or any other journal. And complexity, as said, some journals would take months, some others would take years, and you might not have even a response to reject or accept. Some journals can be as that, but these are some common challenges I have encountered during my experience. I'll go to Serge now, and this may be proof that Serge has some good considerations around these challenges. If we go to the next slide, please, that would be great. Why submit to CERJ? And simply, what you will see here could be the complete opposite of the challenges we have seen in the previous slide. Number one, it is peer reviewed. So you're not submitting your paper to a blog or a vlog or any sort of unrecognized website. This is a journal that has 11 previous volumes. It is hosted by the University of Cambridge. And as you know, with all the rigor of the university, not just in the UK, but internationally. So you are having something that is very rigorous, very high standard, and probably having significant audience who are looking at it, whether they are education related researchers or not, simply because they would be looking at the website or the journal itself. It is open access, so by you sending a paper, it is not going to be, if accepted, it's not going to be restricted to a certain amount of audience. It will be publicly available, and it hasn't got a time frame on availability online. So as long as the Cambridge website is there, that paper will be there. Um, Submissions are welcomed from all researchers, so there is no restriction to who you are, but the restriction is the theme that you're applying to. So the journal has a specific themes that are being defined, and there is a criteria. And accordingly, if you have a paper that confirms around one of these themes, then you are absolutely welcomed to submit. We're not restricting submissions to the University of Cambridge students or researchers. Rather, it is open for all worldwide contributions. And if you look into the previous volumes, you would be able to see the names and the different institutions that have contributed to this. Editorial review process. We have we have a process where we're going for initial screening as editorial team to simply accept, reject, or ask for modification prior to double-blinded review. But the blind review is a review that is taking place by two reviewers who are independent, and they have their own experience in the field, and they have been selected based on the criteria for peer reviewers. So there is a rigorous process in place. However, there will be always explanation. So if there is a modification request, we will tell you exactly what could be modified or what should be modified. And of course, you can ask questions through emails and other communications. There is no submission fees, since it is something for pure academic purpose. Where, as a journal, we're not looking at commercial activity out of this. And it is a student-led journal, even though it is supported by advisors from the university itself. Sorry, just a moment. Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, I'm just muting myself there. Yeah. So that is something. And also, if we look at, I've talked about the idea it's being hosted by the university, and you can have your say as a contributor to knowledge. So you might be a student of Cambridge or any other university, but this is a unique opportunity where actually your work can be there for as long as it takes on a global leading university in that sense. Moving to the next slide, if possible. Some consideration to prepare your manuscript. There is a published criteria, which is the template, but these are general guidelines. We're following APA, referencing to 7th edition. I know many people who are coming from other universities might be using things like Harvard University, for example, but that is the specific criteria for this journal, and I believe for at least the Faculty of Education within the university. And that would be one reason to ask for revisions in a way of the manuscript if sent in another format. You can use times 12, no extra spacings again, as you can see. keep the headings, subheadings, without extra spacing. Be very brief with the abstract. Many of the previous submissions actually were around 250 to 300, but try not to go beyond, because that will be picked up by the first initial review and also the blind review, which will delay things for modification in a way. Um, you can embed tables, but make sure they are very well referenced, very well signposted. We have no objection in relation to the use of language, whether American or English, but or British, but just be consistent with it. So, for example, if you're going with American spellings, then just be consistent throughout, because that might not represent the rigor of the journal if we're one time having Z and another time having S, for example. And again, in relation to referencing, please refer to that accordingly. If you move to the next slide. These are different possibilities of papers that you can send. So, and knowing the target of the journal being early researchers, first time researchers, or publishers, um, um, we are welcoming all types of different papers. And that can be your preliminary investigation, which can be a pilot study or research notes, but it has to be shaped in a way that looks like a paper. So, in other words, introduction, methodology, introduction, literature, methodology, discussion, conclusion, and the template would give you some guideline on that. But do not worry or do not feel that it will be rejected if it was not the complete paper. You can always present it as a working paper, and that can be as part of the pilot. We're welcoming literature reviews, or systematic literature review in a way. However, you need to be rigorous with it, because usually this requires additional evidencing that this literature review is following a rigorous methodology. So I'm not going to write just a paper without a methodology. You need to have that methodology section to show that there was a way to do the literature review itself. Full research paper, conference proceeding. So if you're presenting a paper somewhere, you can always uh, develop it as a paper and say as a result of conference. Um, One interesting contribution that we can have, which is reflective or creative formats. Now, I know if you've been into the Faculty of Education, in many cases people would write reflectively, or even they might include data that comes from their own participation, things like observations, etc. We're welcoming that, but again, just be very rigorous with the introduction, the methodology. At least there is an explanation of the methodology you have followed, and feel free to use I if you're going for a reflective format, because that would be welcomed. Um, and yeah, if the paper has limitations, I would say just feel free to include it, because one way that I was always challenged with different papers, sometimes a paper looks perfect, you look at it and say, well, oh, that's great, well done, but where's the miss? Because any readers would want to see the miss. The miss sometimes could be limitations. The miss can be sometimes about what could be done better, what could be the future areas of research. So try to always highlight the negative side if you can, to inform the readers about the paper itself. That can be part of methodology, or it could be part of the concluding remarks, or moving forward with future research, etc. So, and be strict with the word counting, because it could be a reason for rejection, because remember, it is part of a journal. It is not a book publication, it's not a chapter publication. I think I can see Sarah nodding her head. It's not a book publication, you know. If it was a book, I would say, oh, go ahead and, you know, send your PhD thesis and just convert it into chapters. But this one is a paper, and if you can fit within the word count to disseminate your publication, that's great. If something interesting here, because I have faced this issue um, during my doctoral time before finishing, and even after, because I was so excited about converting my doctoral thesis into publications. Now, I would say the following: look at certain trends and themes within your work and try to extract part of the work. You know, you can't I'm one of the people who believe that you can't maybe have your whole PhD thesis into one paper, because you might have had different themes within the work, and you can identify a certain theme and, you know, bring it all in one paper, and then accordingly maybe you can end up with 5 papers or 4 papers or presentations as a result. So do not try to put everything in one. Just to be reasonable about it, and try to modify your methodology and introduction to suit that. Otherwise, not only CERJ, but I think many other journals will just give you a quick rejection because it doesn't simply meet their criteria in a way. If we go to the next slide, please, that would be great. Yeah, what works and what to avoid. Again, some of these points we've talked about. Follow the guidelines. You know, again, one famous quote I can use from one of the friends who says, "We can we can sometimes be punished for not following the rules, but nobody can punish me for following the rules." So if I follow the rules, I think I have a good reason to argue with a certain case. The rules can be the template, you know, because it is there to standardize things. The rules can be the word count. The rules can be even the abstract or even the headings, etc. So you know, sometimes these could be little things for a writer or a scholar perspective, because they say, oh, I have a wonderful paper, but at the end of the day, um, you know, there are a lot of submissions, and the reviewers will be proposing the best submissions that suit the journal, and that do not require significant editorial work. Remember, you are the author, and you know, meeting the criteria is a key requirement in that sense. So the guidelines, the right format, the academic tone. Again, I think here we're being flexible with the journal, because we are encouraging reflective papers. If there is a reflective paper in a way, then that is absolutely fine. You might receive a feedback from the reviewer. So you know, very rarely in my case, a paper got accepted from the first time. So usually there is a reviewer coming back and say, well, yeah, this is not clear, or the template is not fitting, etc. So be ready for such a thing. Um, Proofread, because one of, you know, one of the worst things that could happen, you would have a paper being published, and then you realize that there are a few words being misspelled. Sometimes some misspellings can be disastrous because they can change the whole meaning. um, you can proofread it before, and it will be going through a third review. So what we have a first screening, then we have double blind, and then there is editorial review, where we have sub editors looking at it for review. However, uh, you know, they will read it as a reader, but again, it all come back to you as the author, in relation to thinking about, is this a paper that can be represented as a final publication? So before you send it through, just give it another read, and you know, if you can't, then give it to one of your friends to read it before you send it for a final submission. Common mistakes, again, templates, misplacement, poor formatting, long abstract, or vague focus. And that's something about somebody trying to put everything in one paper. You can divide it, or you can, for example, this time you can say, this year I'm publishing this theme from my research, and then maybe I'm leaving that for the next year. So maybe that would give you some continuity. And do not leave it until the deadline, because something might come up for last minute and will stop you from submitting, and then having to communicate informally to ask it to be accepted, etc. Maybe there will be an overwhelming numbers, and things might be restricted. The deadline is a deadline, so just try to work around it. um, Otherwise, and again, with our case, we're just having one volume a year, so missing a deadline, it means you missed the submission for the whole year, and then you just have to wait for the next year. Next slide. Just final few things. You know, if you look at the journal online, it is purely there for encouraging people. And I would say, if I was to submit a paper to this journal, one of the first few things I will do, I will look at the previous volumes. I'll see what was sort of done, how I could reshape my paper, look at the criteria. um, and I would say, interestingly, from what I saw so far from submissions, we're clearly engaging a wide spectrum, or wide amount of audience, where we're having even established scholars sending things through. So it's not early researchers only, and we're quite open. We're not restricting this to any institution. It's a global contribution, and very respectable papers we have received so far, and I'm sure we will receive by the deadline as well. If you're interested to be a reviewer as well, there is an opportunity to do so by submitting your form online. If you check the website for the journal, there is a section which asks for contributions as reviewers. There will be a training workshop provided, and yeah, if you need any details, or you're not sure about something, just feel free to drop an email, and either myself or one of the colleagues within the journal team will be responding to you. Um, I'll just leave it at this point, and maybe we can take any questions. I'm not sure, Agnes or Sarah, if you is the next slide for questions, or yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be looking at the chatting section as well. But thank you
Okay.
so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Hussam, for the very insightful tips and advice on how to start our journey, especially in research and starting our research articles. So now we will go to, so yeah, there's a bit of a how to like
Yeah.
review the standards of search. Here we can see an overview of how it will be done. So there's like a desk review by the editorial board member. And this includes quality and clarity check, the alignment with search focus areas, and the compliance with our technical submission guidelines. And then there is a double-blind peer review process, which is selected by external reviewers. And this category also talks about your originality of the research, the contribution according to the field, the organization of material, clarity of writing, and also technical things such as grammar, spelling, and punctuation. And also there's detailed considerations such as the relevance of the chosen research methods, coverage of the literature, and how the arguments in your research papers are conducted, as well as any conclusions and thoughtful interpretations. Yeah, now we will go on to the Q&A session. So we have several questions. So first things first is by Ksenia. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right. I'm so sorry. So the question is, what is the criteria being followed for decision making, such as regarding acceptance and rejections of submissions? So maybe, Dr. Hussam, you can tell us what
Yeah.
is usually accepted, and what are the reasons of rejections of research paper? Yeah,
Yeah, well,
perfect.
thanks. I'll just give a brief review and open the space as well if Sarah wants to contribute to this. Um, we are going, as I said, through initial screening of all papers that we receive before they go for a blind review. We have four areas for deciding the quality and the rigor of the paper. So, number one, overall quality and clarity. In other words, is it a quality paper? Does it fit our standard in terms of the journal requirement and the themes of the journal? And that goes with being aligned with the journal focus. So the overall quality, alignment with the journal focus in terms of themes, compliance with the submission guidelines. So we're looking at template and word length and also the abstract requirements that we're asking for. And the last one, it is about referencing. Now, that will be the initial review, and then if that succeeds, you will be notified within a time frame. I think 30 days we have, but Sarah can add on that as well. And then it will go for double blind if it gets accepted. There might be a third option, which is asking for modification. So if there are minor differences or things that require alignment, um, it might not receive a complete rejection, but rather it will be requiring modification prior to passing to the double blinded review in this case. Sarah, if you want to say something there, feel free.
Thank you, Sam. Well, actually, I guess the one that Agnes mentioned just now, the last slide, maybe we can just go back to the last slide. That's certainly the standard for the review, and what we use when we decide to accept with modifications or reject your paper. As Hussam mentioned over and over again, that we're going to have a multi-layered review stage. The first one is going to be desk review that is being reviewed by us, editorial board members. It's going to be a general review, right? And so we're going to look at your paper, but we're just going to look at these three requirements. And we can safely say to you that we would love to accept as many as we can, as long as you follow these three general requirements, right? But then, if your paper is accepted on the initial pre-selection by us, we're going to send out your papers to external independent peer reviewers who are obviously gonna have a lot more rigorous review process, selection process. As you can see here, they're gonna see the summary assessment of your work. They're also gonna be looking out for your detailed consideration. So if you are interested to publish with us, make sure that you follow the guidelines that we have, you follow the template, and you are also ensuring that you can actually eligible and follow all these requirement for later stage. But do not fret. We really want to help you to publish with us. So we're gonna help you along the way with the email and everything. We're not gonna outright reject your paper if it's something to do with technical consideration. But if it's something that is work fatal, like maybe out of scope of our search scope and focus, which is actually in itself is a bit broad. We accept like literally paper related to educations. So that's a pretty broad range of scope. Or if it's, the quality of your paper below threshold, or if we spot ethical concerns, something that is very fatal and basic, that's probably going to end up with rejection on our part. But otherwise, please follow the guideline, please follow the templates that we send out in our website, and we hope to have you publish with us. All right, thank you.
Great.
Right. Thanks so much, Sam and Sarah. So moving on to our next question, from Gayong Choi. So first, when submitting a literature review manuscript, is it advisable to include research questions, or is it optional?
Yeah.
And yeah, you can
Yeah.
maybe answer
I
as easy
can
as.
see the trial of questions there. So with question one, when submitting a literature review manuscript, is it advisable to include research question or not? Actually, it is advisable because, again, assume the readers have no view of the subject or they don't understand the subject. Usually, a central research question is advisable. Some literature reviews, for example, include multiple questions. So you might have a key question and sub questions. Some people have one question, some people have two, or I would say maximum two, 3 to 5. But again, if you're going longer than that, it becomes very vague paper. So a central question, which you can indicate as part of the ending of the introduction, for example, before going into the other parts, I think that would be great because that would give the paper a focus and clarity for the reader. Um, with the second question, the word limit in the literature review is quite broad, 2,500 to 6,000. Do you have any recommendations on the ideal length? Well, that is why we kept it broad. But I think usually literature reviews are about that. So, for example, I have this is from a very personal experience. I have published a literature review which was just under 6,000, so 5,500, but that was something that included tables, etc. Something I would say on the tables, for example, which usually tend to, when we submit things, let's say for assessment purpose, we tend to include an appendix. Now, in a journal paper, try to include everything within the paper itself because the appendix will be a little bit challenging to refer to when you are publishing it as a paper, and the paper will end with the reference list. So if there is an appendix that is important, include it as part of the paper. If it's not important at all, for example, I don't know, some people have included list of the questions asked during interview, then I think really maybe that can be included as a screenshot within the methodology or the part of the discussion, but not necessarily an appendix. So that might bump up the word count a little bit. But we're flexible. I would say a rigorous literature review will be around 4,000 words plus, but it can be as low as 2,500 words. That's fine. Um, would it be all right to contribute to the journal as both a reviewer and an author at the same time? Yes, absolutely. And we would welcome that actually. That has no restriction at all, because simply if you were accepted as a reviewer and say your paper got accepted, we will not conflict them together. So your paper will be given to other reviewers and you will be reviewing work that has no connection with your submission at all. So that's fine. And lastly, is it permitted to submit two papers to the journal? For example, one sole author and another co-author. Fine, you can submit as many as you want, and the same criteria will be applied on every paper. And again, when they go for review process, they are being looked at as anonymous papers. That's why when we're asking you to submit two versions, one with the name and one without, it is solely for that purpose, actually. So you're welcome to submit more than one, but you might get them all published, or you might just get one, or you might just get no one published. So applying the criteria pretty much as it is. Agnes, if you so hopefully that answers your questions, but very good questions, and I'm sure they will help others to understand the case. Agnes, if you want to take me to the next person, or feel free.
Oh yeah. Yeah, thank you, Hussam. And yeah, we have the next question from Amina. Maybe, Hussam, you can right away answer the question. So this one, the difference
Yeah.
between a critical review and a literature review manuscript.
Yeah, this is interestingly, this is quite controversial because many people would give you different answers. But in very short, critical review is when you are looking at a single paper or multiple papers for evaluation of the strengths and weaknesses within a certain area. So let's say you might picked up three, four papers that you're evaluating their strengths, weaknesses, and you are ending up with synthesis. Now, a literature review is a little bit beyond that. So you are actually looking at a topic area and not necessarily looking at things in a very systematic way in terms of looking at weaknesses and strengths, but rather you are discussing a topic. Um, some people, for example, they don't have just a literature review, they have a systematic literature review, which is another type of literature review where they are having literature review on a topic, but also it is applying a very rigorous inclusion and exclusion criteria. And accordingly, for example, you might end up with introduction for just presenting this out loud to you. So you might have an introduction, then preliminary literature where you are discussing the topic, and then accordingly you're going with your methodology where you have a clear inclusion and exclusion criteria from the literature based on what you want to find, and you might end up with selecting, let's say, 10 or 12 or 15 or whatever the number is to investigate for evaluating strengths and weaknesses and synthesizing. So that is a systematic literature review. They're all welcomed, but I would welcome, for example, if you're looking at critical review, I would welcome personally a review that engages more than one paper because, one paper, it is possible to have that as a review, but it wouldn't be giving something meaningful to the reader. So if you looked at, let's say, the strengths and weaknesses of multiple papers, say five, six papers, that then could end up with very good synthesis and very good outcomes, which could be new to the reader, and that will pretty much align with what we're looking for in a way. Um, Based on previous issues, how successful have submissions of completed standalone MPhil essays? Yeah, absolutely, that is possible. But to try to convert it into a paper standard, because, for example, MPhil essays, as you know, they are following the assessment criteria. So, chapter one, two, three, or different format, I would say you would fit it within the requirement. And you can make a declaration, interestingly, towards the beginning or towards the end of the paper as an acknowledgement to say this is relating to my existing work of MPhil, etc. But follow the template and be as rigorous as possible. If the work that you did is extending beyond a paper, then feel free to split it based on themes or based on different contributions you have. Because sometimes it is really difficult to have a dissertation in one paper. So give that a thought. But it is possible, and there are cases. What are the copyrights restrictions on including already published material, tables or transcripted extracts, paper critiquing empirical studies? Will papers immediately rejected if copyrighted material is included, or will support be given on the review process? Um, the, it can be part of rejection if there is quite a lot of copyright material there, but I guess this is what referencing is here for. So, for example, if you included a screenshot of a table and you reference that table, then that is absolutely fine. But just be as clear as possible in your referencing, and be very clear in your methodology. If that was required as part of the ethics section, you can include that, and that will be certainly considered as part of the first review and blind review process. If there is a serious issue about it, and that could be including, let's say, a certain damage, then it might actually lead to a rejection. I will be very fair about that. Um, um, and I think, am I correct now? We're moving to um, Stratika questions. Is that the case?
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, we will move to
Trying to
Shristika's
find
question.
trying to find the question there. So my question is regarding submitting an extracted theme from your own research work, like dissertation, submitting one of your academic essays. What kind of revisions, changes, edits would recommend to critical review paper or literature review? Yeah, the reviews you can do is make sure, number one, you fit the template. Number two, remove anything that looks at it as an assessment, but rather you are engaging an audience beyond the marker. Usually, for example, when people do it as an essay, they are engaging a marker, and accordingly they're following a criteria for marker. In this case, make sure your references are very correct. Make sure that your template is standard. Make sure that you are not representing anything about, let's say, a module or a criteria, but rather it is about a paper. And if certain things that require paraphrasing or addition, do that. For example, if you had a paper from last year and you wanted to include it, maybe things have changed in the field, and that might require some updates. So do not just take it as it is. Maybe you can update quite a few things before sending it. And I think from today's time frame, we have about 3 weeks until the deadline. So that might be possible to look at one paper, look at the current literature, look at the current discussions. You can upgrade it to a higher standard. Remember, we are submitting things for assessment sometimes, but we're not thinking about it as a publication. If you're thinking about it in that way, you need to upgrade the whole quality of the work to be to a publishable standard, because simply the moment it gets out there, it will be attached to your name, and you want to be proud of it, and that's very important. So even though we're going through our rigorous process, but the moment it is out there, it is out there. So just make sure it is something that you're satisfied about, and it is really representing the topic that you want to express yourself on. And be clear with the ethics part. So if you collected data, this is also another important point here. If you collected data for essay purpose, make sure you review your ethics consideration, because sometimes you got approved ethically for program of studies, to do that research or to submit it, but maybe the contributors haven't approved you to publish it externally. So just before you send something, just make sure that ethically it is the right thing to do. And hopefully that answers your question. Again, if anybody needs any further clarifications, you can always email and the team will pick it up. Absolutely. Yeah, and it is an interactive process. So let's say you've submitted something and it is again something that is fitting our criteria, we will ask for modifications. But do the self-check. Try to say and be convinced that this is the paper you really wanted to be representing who you are and the rigor of the University of Cambridge, because the paper will be there as long as the website is there for the University of Cambridge. So it's very important that you're sending something you're really convinced that this represents you, your quality, and the university, and also the journal requirements. So, and I hope that I can see at least one publication for all of you, Um, yeah, so I guess that leaves us with the end of the questions. Of course, open the floor for any further questions, but I would welcome the idea that you can always email and communicate. I would be happy to pick up any further. Thank you. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Husang, for the very insightful and fruitful answers from our participants. And yeah, we will be very excited to receive all your submissions. So please do submit your work, and best wishes to everybody. So now, moving on to our next session. So, Sarah, it's your time to explain our timeline for submissions in this volume. So over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Agnes, and thank you, Sam, for the very insightful and thorough explanation to everyone. So I'm going to be here to talk to you a little bit more about the timeline of CERJ. You probably really are excited to know when exactly your paper are going to be published. So CERJ itself, like we mentioned in the early date, it's going to be an annual publication. So we only publish once a year. There are going to be 5 stages to work with us for your publications. The first one is the submission of your manuscript, which is ongoing right now, which has been ongoing actually. We started off the launch on 7 March, and we're going to have the deadline on 12th of May. So what happens in this very first stage is that, of course, we're going to accept as many manuscript as we can from you or prospective authors. And at the same time, we're going to do the pre-selection process or desk review process by editorial board. As you would see earlier, that we have our standard for the review of each of incoming submission. And we hope to be able to send out the result of the desk review back to you within 30 days of your submission. So we strongly recommend you, if you are interested to submit and publish with us, and ready to do that, just submit your paper as soon as possible so that we can take a look at them already. Our manpower is very limited. So it would be great if we can accept your paper, or we can have your paper early so we can do a desk review as soon as possible so you can make adjustment or revision before the deadline happening. The second stage after we send out the result for your desk review is coming onto the external peer review process, which has also been going at the same time with the call for peer reviewers. So if some of you are interested to also act out as a peer reviewer for CERJ, please, we really welcome your applications and your contribution with us. The next after the deadline for the call for peer reviewers, we're going to select and train the external reviewers so that all of us have the same understanding as to how to do the review for CERJ. And afterwards, we're going to do a peer review process, double-blind peer review process with our independent reviewers. The next stage is after we receive recommendation and suggestions from our reviewers, we're going to come back to you, prospective authors, with our first editorial decision. So what you're going to do next as an author is to review and revise the draft based on the recommendations from both the reviewers and also editorial board members. And afterwards, you're going to do a second submission to us. And that's when we're going to send you the final editorial decision. That's going to happen until the end of September. And the latter stage will see us working on copy editing and also final editing your manuscript. And of course, the last stage is what we've been waiting for, doing the formatting, generating your DOIs, and also be ready to launch for publications. At the moment, we do write down there it's going to be by the end of November. That's what we're foreseeing. But again, it's a limited manpower, but we want to ensure that it's all going to be happening within this year or before the end of the year. And hopefully, again, this is going to be an intense communication, an open communication with prospective authors. So don't fret. we're gonna inform you every step of the way so that you know exactly when you can see your publication actually published on our website. All right, Agnes, maybe the next slide, please. All right, website walkthrough. I'm sure everyone here has actually already walked through our website, but just in case, I'll just share my screen for a moment. If you don't mind, Agnes, thank you so much. Yeah. I hope everyone can see here. So basically, um, this is all the information about what to do if you're interested with CERJ. If you can scroll through, read through everything on the website, that would be perfect. But I understand that every one of us is busy. So for this walkthrough, I just want to tell you which part of the website that I really encourage you to take a look at before submitting with us. The first one is absolutely the homepage or the main page of CERJ, because in here we're going to put every updated information or opportunities with CERJ Volume 12. As you can see here, we put everything about submission workshop, call for submission, and also call for review us. And you can also follow us on our Instagram. This is where you can find all the updated information from our end. But then another one that you might want to take a look at, and some of the questions before actually ask this question is regarding our policies. So you would see over here, we also have information about important copyright information, open access policy of CERJ, and what are the responsibilities of authors with CERJ. And when you submit your work with us, we will also ask you to confirm your agreement with our terms and conditions. So it will be nice if you also can take a look at each one of this. And if you have any questions, to also shoot us an email. The last tab that I really want to emphasize for you to take a look at is the submission tab. This is where all of the information that we mentioned before, that Husam mentioned before, regarding, the decision-making process of whether we accept or reject your manuscript. We have the submission guidelines. We still have some previous submission where people don't follow our template, and that's gonna result in a delay of our response to you. So you can click on this and it will bring you to our volume 12 2025 template, and you can certainly write your paper in accordance to our template over here. You can simply download it, right? And then use the template as you're writing your paper. And then there is more information about our reference styling. Also some notes that is also available on the template itself. And also equally important is the more information about the papers accepted with us. So there are questions just now about what should you write in your literature review or critical reviews. There are it's not a strict or a fixed kind of content, but kind of like suggestions from us on what you can write if you're planning to submit critical reviews or literature reviews paper. So definitely take a look at it. Do read through all of this, and also the recording from today's will also be available on this page. Okay, so that's that. And the last one, I also want to end this with a promotion. So if you're interested, if you already have interest to submit your manuscript, why not? Also try to apply as a reviewer for CERJ. So if you think that you fulfill the eligibility criteria to apply as a reviewer with us, we definitely welcome your applications. And the registration deadline would be 16th of May. And you can check our website or all of the WhatsApp that I've been sending to all the groups. That being said, someone asked questions about the main criteria. I can safely say to you that the main criteria is really one of the most fundamentals. Main criteria is really the match between the reviewer's expertise and interest and also background of knowledge with the manuscript that we received. Okay, so if it's you and you're keen to challenge yourself and contribute to scholarly discourse with us, do apply as our reviewer. That's it from me, and I'll give it back to Agnes. Thank you.
Okay, great, fantastic. Thank you, Sarah, and also Husam for giving us insights on how to nail your first submissions for those who are beginners, and also for those experienced researchers. Please also contribute to this year and the Volume 12 CERJ journal. So, yeah, that is all from us today. And thank you so much for participating. And we will keep you updated things via our website, also our Instagram account. And if you have if you have any questions, please email us, and we will get in touch with you. Yeah, so thanks so much, everyone, for joining, and looking forward to your submissions. See you. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Should we end the recording?